With the primer lines in and run, of course I don't have the end on that one like that goes to the engine because I don't know exactly how long that's going to be. It'll be trimmed off. And I got my electrical lines, cable for the starter and for the alternator. I've got that little shield there built. The next step that I decided to do was to work on these controls. These are the engine controls, or the throttle control, of course I already had in there, but this is the mixture control. This is a control for the carb heat, and this is a control for the cabin air. And they have another control in there for the windshield defrost. There's how they look so far mounted in the airplane. I don't have the one for the rear seat heat installed yet. I'm not real sure what I'm going to do with that one yet. The control box for the back seat heat is kind of a disaster, and I talked to F. Atlee Dodge last summer when I was up there getting a flight physical about getting a new one. They make a new stainless steel one. I talked to them about getting one. They told me it'd be ready in a couple of months, and I never have heard back from them. So I try to repair the one that I've got and put it in there. I'm not sure. It's $450 for a new one. But anyway, I've got the other lines in. I got the mixture, carb heat. This will be the windshield defrost. And then this is the cabin heat. I put a new cable on the cabin heat. It runs through the firewall here kind of at an angle. And it's got kind of a kink in it right there. Cut that and fitted it in. Made a circle on the end of it here to hook onto the control. I had to drill a hole in the firewall here for an anchor point on it, because otherwise the cable just moves back and forth and it doesn't move the flapper valve around. And then this one here connects into this little stud that is welded onto the airframe to hold the fuselage or the firewall on. I may have made a mistake on that cable. I knew I was going to need a new one, and I thought I would need it for the mixture, but the one for the cabin heat takes a pretty good beating because it runs right behind that muffler, right against the firewall, and rubs and stuff. But I've got a plastic lined control cable, and with that right behind that muffler, that may melt the plastic in there. I don't know. I probably should have just went with a regular unlined control cable on that. The plastic lined ones are a lot smoother to operate, but again, they go over that extreme heat like that muffler and the exhaust system, probably melt the plastic in there, so I may have to change that out. Now, the next thing that I'm working on is trying to hook up this electrical system for the alternator, and I thought that was pretty simple. I've got the two cables that were on it. I have those labeled as to where they went, and I hooked them up to the switch in there, the master switch. But I got to looking at it and trying to figure this thing out, how to wire it up, and that's not going to work like that because there's no power coming to it. You've got to have power coming to the alternator to excite the windings in the alternator to generate voltage out of it. Otherwise it doesn't do anything. And the way I've got this set now, one of these went to this capacitor and the other one went to the field, and that won't do anything. So got to get that taken care of. I wanted to get everything here towards the firewall all taken care of so that I can put the side panels on and stuff here when I get ready to, and I don't have to fool with any of that stuff. Well, hopefully I got this wired right. It's kind of hard finding a wiring diagram for this. This is an InterNav kit, I guess, InterNav alternator, but everything on here is not supplied with a kit. It's got a different regulator, and this is the over voltage relay here, and it's different than the one in the InterNav kit. It's only got two terminals on it. Oh, one of the terminals is supposed to be a ground. When a 3-terminal one just grounds through the chassis. It's just got two terminals on it. You've got the main power coming in from the switch from the bus bar, and then the load going out, and that goes over to the voltage regulator. And then we've got this can here, that's a capacitor for noise suppression, and we've got a ground wire coming off of it, off the negative. It goes into the ground and then goes to the screw for the chassis ground to ground the voltage regulator. And wire coming off the positive of that goes to the regulated side of the voltage regulator. But I've got it twisted around the field winding. One of the sources I saw on there said to wrap it around the field line several times, and that makes sense because that would pick up any induced spikes or anything like that to help take them to ground too. Well, that's supposed to take any noise to ground. And then I've got a 2-wire 18 gauge conductor, 2-wire with ground, taking that to run up to the alternator. One lead going to the regulator, regulated side, one lead going to the field, and then shield is the ground. I put a heat-proof cushioned 8L clamp here on the firewall. We've got it on there to be for strain relief, to keep that wire back out of the way of everything else, keep it from getting so messy in there. And I just run that wire down along the firewall here and run it in to where my alternator wire and my starter wire come out of the firewall. I took some heat shrink tubing, slipped this regulator cable and the alternator wire together. I slipped the heat shrink over that out several places, just short lengths of it, and shrunk it together to come down here. And then I took some short lengths and coupled up the starter cable with the other cable system, because they'll be put together as it runs up through the engine compartment anyway. I've got them together there now, kind of keep them tied up and keep them from getting tangled up and messed up. If we have to, we can cut those out and realign them or something like that, but for now that keeps them tidied up a little bit. Only got one more thing to come through the firewall, and that's the EGT and the cylinder head temperature gauge wire. So I'll run those through this big hole. I thought that was going to be busy with the mixture cable, but I run the mixture cable down out the same hole as the throttle cable, so this gives me lots of room here, and that way I can just push those cables in and out through this. It'll actually make them easier to change, because then if the EGT or the CHT thermocouple goes bad, I can pull the wires out through this opening instead of crawling underneath the instrument panel and trying to work on them on my back underneath there, or whoever's working on the airplane. Well, I was going to run them through this same hole as all the rest of the wires and stuff, but since I got lots of room here, I'm just going to run them through here.